All right, buddy. Well, it's 12:10. We'll go ahead and get started. I think we still got people pouring in, but we'll let them catch up. My name's Connor Ingram. I'm a citizen developer turned Power Platform specialist, going on 4 years experience. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself and let's get started.
Yeah. Hey, Connor. Thanks for having me today. I'm Chris Cognetta. I'm the CTIO here at CongruentX. I'm responsible for both our chief architect as well as product innovation. You may have heard of our product DialoguePrime that combines conversational intelligence with your CRM platform, Dynamics or Salesforce. And really just excited to talk about AI and how it's become the buzzword around town these days. I'm also one of your Dynamics MVPs, been MVP just recently renewed for my 11th year or 11th season, as I'd like to say. The show is still being funded. And, my background is started in architecture, did development, pretty much been in every role that you could have in IT. So when you bring me into the room, I can talk network, I can talk database, analytics, and most importantly, talk with the business owners to achieve the outcomes that we're trying to get together. So that's a little bit about me and my role at CongruentX.
Thanks. So like you mentioned, everybody's been talking about AI relatively recently, really within the past year, but it's been around for decades. Why the change?
Yeah, I think, it's a good point. And that's really when you signal something's come mainstream, right? When your neighbors or your kids come home and say, hey, I did ChatGPT with my homework, right? That means that the adoption is out of control, going as fast as possible. And that's what we're seeing here. So really, what's made it possible is the shift to cloud. When you look at foundational models like large learning models and machine language, which makes it possible, that started back in the mid to late 50s. And the challenge has always been being able to consume the data, right? So in order to make these models work, they need training data. Well, gathering training data back then meant that you were, scanning books, right? Getting data from those books, and it was only available to the data that you could consume. Well, fast forward to the internet now, basically, we have all kinds of data that's available on the internet. Everything from current news, topics, and events to, to business processes, to products, to videos, to all kinds of things. So now, the fact that you have the ability to train that model is much more dynamic, right? So they're either scanning the internet and bringing that training data in, and that's what's really opened up the door for what you're seeing with ChatGPT and OpenAI and some of the other services that have come up.
Mm-hmm. To say it like a little different way, this is one of the first experiences we've seen that's kind of just got general knowledge, right? You're kind of saying for a long time, we've had really specific tailored things, but what OpenAI has done is they've trained this model or maybe a collection of models on the internet itself, right? So it's got more of a generic knowledge, which makes it more applicable to the everyday user.
Yeah, and it's expensive to build and train these things, right? It's a lot of money to gather it, store the data, build the model on it, and really by moving to cloud and SaaS-based models, that's what made these LLMs possible.
Mm-hmm.
And really, why are they doing this stuff, right? A lot of people are, the first question I get asked all the time is it going to take my job? And I know you're going to ask that later on in the script, but really that's a big question. And really starts with the fact that we have a shortage of developers, right?
Yep.
The world has gone app centric, app crazy, and by 2027 we need over 5 million apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're short 4 million developers to deliver those. So if you look at the focus on low code and AI built solutions, that's why you see the push that you see today.
Mm-hmm. In that note, would you say AI has become mainstream? In what and in what kind of spheres has it become mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, AI is really interesting, and I think we're going to see some things here that we've never seen before. For example, I mentioned that not only your children and colleagues are using it, but You're seeing it in newspaper articles. You're seeing it in Facebook ads. You're seeing AI. We just bought a dryer from LG, and it's AI powered. And I'm like, wait a second. There's an AI logo on our dryer. Why? Well, this thing actually connects to the internet and can download different programs based on weight and based on the drying times. You can say it's a color, it's this, it's that, and it knows how to avoid shrinking from information that they're gathering from all their dryers, right? So they're gathering dryer data, building this model, and that's really where they're building this specific detail to be able to help. And again, some of it is still buzzword, right? How much are they really doing there? But you're seeing students have adopted it. You're seeing authors who are blogging, right? All the latest get rich quick things are, hey, you can just use ChatGPT and have 5 blogs and make $5,000 a month, right? But in my personal belief, I think we're going to see the fastest adoption that we've ever seen of any technology that the world has ever seen. Cloud took us almost 10 years, a decade, right? AI is such a seismic shift that people will be adopting it less than 30 days. And we're seeing that with DialoguePrime today. We're seeing people consume AI call summaries and make a huge difference in their weekly workload and productivity. 6 to 7 hours of time spent reading emails and call summaries reduced, right? And gone. What could you in your business do with 6 or 7 more hours of time? And then, one of the real cool statistics, and Microsoft continues to publish some of these along with OpenAI and other sources. GitHub, for you that don't know, GitHub is code repository, open source repository that you can go out, put your projects in, kind of share code together, really help everybody build components, right? With the concept of, if I built a connector to Salesforce, then why would I want to rebuild it again? I could just leverage someone else's connector, right? So kind of like an open sharing thing. You can still use it with your internal systems and security for your code as well. But in the first month's implementation, and what they did is they took all of the GitHub projects and they trained it into a large language model called Codex. So think about everybody writing code, C#, VB, whatever it may be, right? Training the model on that. And in 1 month's time, here's some of the numbers. 40% of new code is automatically written by AI, by somebody grabbing that connector and saying, I need this. And it's a 55% developer productivity improvement, which is an instant ROI. We're talking less than 30 days, folks. Right? So when we talk about, is this real? Is it happening? Are people really using and consuming it? Yes. The answer is yes. It's here. It's real. I know we get into all the other stories, and we'll talk about some of that to help clarify that as well in the future. But really, there's instant ROI here.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when I need to do something in more of a pro code approach. That's where I start. It doesn't always get it right the first time, but typically it sure is close. Another thing I think we can kind of say is, ChatGPT and AI in general has kind of hit every industry. I've seen it in game development, the new Unreal Engine 6, I think I was seeing, they're starting to use a bunch of AI in there for, like landscape generation and things. Really, really cool stuff. Another thing I was kind of thinking about is, I think a big reason this ChatGPT specifically, right? Everybody's got their own flavor of it now, right? Google's releasing their thing. Microsoft they bought OpenAI, but they also have Bing Chat, which is a little bit different. I think one of the things that made ChatGPT as big as it was is they spent a ton of money, like you said, training on the entire internet, but also they spent a ton of money on human review. So they spent, I don't know how much money, probably millions of dollars paying people to review and rate and train the responses of the actual LLM. That said, all of these great things that you hear about AI, there are some things that don't always go right, right? We hear about, getting crazy details back, wrong answers. You know, the other day on Reddit, I saw if there's a bug currently, or maybe they fixed it. If you ask ChatGPT to repeat some phrase 100 times or have it repeat, it will repeat it 100 times, but then return just the most random things ever. So, Chris, can you expand on that? Why does that happen? How do we know this is business ready?
Yeah. So AI hallucination is what you're talking about, and it's a real problem. We've seen summaries come back with it's summarizing the call, and halfway through the call, you see blah 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 blah, just like that, right? Like the AI didn't understand it. When you see some of these examples that are being, in my opinion, over exaggerated on the internet for propaganda, right? To be able to say, hey, this is not ready, or I'm afraid of it, right? But when you look at those examples, most of them come from not failing to prompt engineer. And what prompt engineering is, it's how you tell and give the instructions to the AI and what it should do. Okay. When you make it very generic, or you ask it for a behavior that you know that's not there, or that shouldn't be there, then that is where that problem comes from. Right.
Right.
But the models themselves are trained on, real events and real data. It's really interesting on, if you look at these models, like I'll give you a good example. If you go ask ChatGPT right now, if Queen Elizabeth is she still alive? It'll respond that she's still alive and well. Why? Because the model was only trained up to 2021, right? So the training data is only up to 2021. It doesn't have information of current events. Now, they've worked on ways to bridge that gap with being able to crawl the web real time and provide some of that answers into his results as well. But when you look at how it overall works, the data that it's getting is only as smart as the model is, right? And we'll talk about, is it smart in the future and all that. But really, if you don't put the parameters around it, and this, I'll go back to being a child, right? If you put a kid in a room with a bunch of crayons, that's your fault, right? You put a kid in a playpen with the crayons and a book, then you're confining what they're going to do. They're going to write on that book, right? Or they're going to write all over the playpen, but they're going to be inside that group. So prompt engineering gives you that ability to break through and drive into that. Another great example is if you just say, hey, for those science fiction guys out there, if you say, hey, write a biography for John Connor and tell me about the rebel wars of 2022, it'll actually spit it out, whether there's a John Connor or not. And it's all in what I said. I said, write a biography. I didn't tell it to look up a biography for John Connor, right? I actually told it, write me a biography. And that's where the creative part of the engine comes in as well. Not only can I write the blog content, my wife is actually using it in the real estate firm to help write better descriptions, right? After a while, can you imagine? You're constantly saying this beautiful 4-bedroom house. I mean, how many different ways? Charming, right? This lakefront. So the AI can help do that, right? Can come up with some great ways to help her and assist her. But you also have to be careful on what you say and what you do. And really, all of us, if you're using ChatGPT, all of that, you should add prompt engineering as a role on your resume, because it's now a new role, right? There's people that are being hired just for prompt engineers. And learning how to prompt the model and how the models take that data is another step in both what Microsoft and OpenAI and Google are doing for you as the user. So even though you think you're talking directly to the engine, they're prompting in front of that to help do that. I think in the articles that I read, in order to stop some of those hallucinations, there was articles that said that they gave ChatGPT a lobotomy, right? And that's what they did. They basically prompted it to say, you're not going to answer questions about hypothetical situations, right? They can do that. And that is, part of responsible AI and some other things we'll get into. But, and it really goes down to, a lot of people are dependent on the technology and what it's doing. So how do you protect yourself, right?
Yeah. So then, I mean, would you say that these AI models are smart, or are they not smart?
So that's a real good question. And smart is very opinionated on what smart means, right? If you take a look at it, and you go back and look at what is inside an AI model, right? So the first thing is, if you're looking at can they answer a question? The answer is yes, right? Because it has the training data to be able to answer that question. But at the end of the day, that model is just ones and zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's using a predictive algorithm to be able to say, based on this question and based on the training data I have, 95% of people said this, right? So that's its answer it's going to provide. It did not go off and become intelligent, right? It didn't go off and go and say, I'm actually interpreting this information to tell you whether it is intelligent. It's not. Deterministic is another one, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times can you ask ChatGPT the same question and get a different answer?
Yeah.
Right? And again, it being grounded is another element. Is it grounded in facts and truth? So how many times tell your kids not to go on the internet, right? Because it's not always true what you read.
Mm-hmm.
And a personal one is also when you look at the political landscape, right? If you look at some of the ChatGPT responses and what you see in Bing and Bard, there's obviously a certain perspective that the media is portraying, and that has also influenced what the AI responds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just take a look and do some queries yourself. So,
Yeah.
it really, people think it doesn't have any feelings, right? It's trained on the knowledge of what's in there, which can be questionable and it can be influenced. And that's another reason why we need to be responsible with AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
People think it understands language. It doesn't. It interprets language,
Mm-hmm.
right? It has an interpreter no different than we would interpret a different coding language, right? And it's facts, manners, emotions, ethics. It doesn't understand any of that. It
Yep.
can
It's
be
all just
guided
math.
to that through prompt engineering, but out of the box, it doesn't understand that.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I think one interesting thing to think about, and there's no, I don't know of anybody on this planet that knows the right answer, but I think it's an interesting topic, is when you think about the synapses in our brains, right? You would generally say most humans are intelligent, right? The synapses in our brains, there's two parts, right? There's like a little hand looking guy and a little receiver looking guy. I don't know the technical terms. But the way that our brains work is they either are on or off. They are sending or receiving electrical signals. So at what point does the on and off happening in our brains and the on and off happening in a machine become the same thing?
Yeah, and I think again, it goes back to, you're going to keep me constantly saying about AI responsibility, right? And knowing that if these machines, this is not the Terminator, right? This is not, we're building a machine that's going to replace humans or anything like that. What
Yeah.
it's going to do is it's going to handle mundane tasks, right? Things that you do over and over again that should be automated and that aren't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of, one of the perfect things I shared on my Twitter. I was coming back from a recent Microsoft MVP summit, and we had just gotten the fire hose of AI about 7 months ago, right? And the one thing that hit me was Microsoft's branding, and Microsoft's branding is called Copilot. So you may have seen Copilot combined also with Viva for Sales, those capabilities. But the reason why they called it Copilot is because if you think about whether you're in your car and you're navigating using your GPS, or you're in the airplane and you got the pilot on the right side, that Copilot is giving you information to do your job better, easier, more effective,
Mm-hmm.
right? Prevent things from happening that it already knows,
In
right?
that vein, how can we keep our data safe when we're using AI? What are some things we can do?
Yeah. So, and just to close out on that last one, Connor, really, when you look at it, if you think about what is happening in those instruction sets and how they're helping guide you, they
Mm-hmm.
can be very informative to what your role is, what your business process is, right? And part of that is allowing it to get access to our data, and that's a lot of people are scared about it, right?
Right.
So really, is it safe? And it's a good question, right? Um, Models that are trained on publicly facing website data, anything that's on a publicly facing website. And this is not what's a publicly facing website. It's a website that you go to and you can get content without logging in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Non-authenticated for you developers on the phone call, right? In this case, when you think about the data that's out there, would you want it going into your Facebook post and seeing all that data? No. So, and that data lives behind the login for that security purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using ChatGPT directly and you're trying to enter in some of your trade secrets to see, is it better or nothing? Well, guess what? You just entered your data for future training capabilities inside the data. Now, this is when you're using the browser-based version of those tools. They have the right, and it says it right in the, document that none of us read, the privacy policy and all of that. It says that we can use this data to make the model smarter. And a lot of people don't have a problem with that. But you would have a problem with that if it gave away your competitive advantage, or it said, well, Connor from CongruentX said that the best way to get CRM right is to use this offering, right? So it could do that. So how do we protect that? And a lot of that is by using the APIs, right? So the first thing is the API capability, both through ChatGPT, Bard, and Microsoft OpenAI, allows you to directly connect from your internal system through that connection, which basically obfuscates the data. So the model won't have the data of what your system is. It just has enough to make a decision based on the response, right? And that's how Microsoft and these other guys have prompt engineered it to leave your content out of that model. And some of it is just, hey, we're not including it, right? That's a part of it. So when you look at technology that's being released, it's in preview right now, like Microsoft's Azure Bring Your Own Data. What that'll allow you to do is point these chat models directly at your CRM, directly at SharePoint, Azure Cognitive Services, pretty much a data source. It needs to be an indexed data source, right? So anything that you can build an indexed data source against, you'll be able to do that. And then you're going to be able to ask it questions. So if you think about, I love relating this back to like a salesperson who's just joining a company and they get hit with a fire hose of data coming at them to say, you need to learn all these things, right? Well, what if they had that AI chatbot that's sitting next to them that was trained on all that data, and they say, well, how do I prospect? And up comes the entire playbook of how do you prospect, and this is what you do, and here's a call example. You'd have to know where that is today, right? So yes, it's search like Google, that kind of thing, but it adds a whole new context because it's trying to really understand what you're doing. And that's really where the bring your own data both protects your data and helps you expose your corporate data in a responsible way.
Right. When we're talking about AI responsibility, can you formulate a few thoughts on that around, there's maybe a lot of business leaders on this call. How should we be thinking about integrating AI into our organizations, and what are some things we should keep in mind, or maybe some rules that you could think of?
Yeah, well, obviously the first rules that we're talking about is remember that publicly facing content is public. So if you're doing anything that's either creating blogs or whatever you're doing through the native ChatGPT engines, just know that that stuff is open, right? And if you're using it to create a blog, then the content that you're posting is going to be public anyway. So it may not be such a big deal for you, right?
Yeah.
But from a responsibility perspective, it's also making sure that how you consume it in your infrastructure, right? It's not 100%, right? And I mentioned the prompt engineering best practices that help keep you focused in the data, right? So if you, one example of prompt engineering is completely eliminate any vulgar words from any prompt, right? Anything that's said, it won't even respond. It'll say, sorry, that's not appropriate behavior, right? You can have that right away. But think about that container and what do you want to containerize on the data that you have? And it may even be down to, let's say you have specific HR data that you don't want it to see, right? So how do you configure, set that up, and make sure it's safe, right? Is all part of that learning process of how we deploy AI internally, and then how do we use that to get these productivity and increases in our processes, right?
Yeah.
Efficiencies.
I think the two big things I think about are, like you said, understand how you're using it. If you're using the browser, know that your data is getting collected. The second thing to think about is, at least at this point, you got to think about this as a co-pilot. You can't think about it as a set and forget situation. You always need human intervention with anything you're using this for, or at least, in the kind of the chatbot scenario, you just need to understand that you're gonna have to take what it's saying with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is pretty rock solid, right? Like when you're looking at the Viva Sales, for example, where you're getting a summary of a phone call. It's just giving you a summary of the transcript that's there, right? Summary of an email. How many of you have gotten an email that's 20 emails long and you're the last person because you're the escalation point? It takes you what, an hour and a half to read and get the context of all of those emails, right? Well, the AI is a great way to summarize all that data for you, but it still requires you to read it and review it. Would I hit response and reply all and let AI generate that response for that email without reviewing it? No, right? And that's that mentality that we need to get into, of being responsible with it and using it as a co-pilot, not as an automatic replacement for things.
Yep. How long has CongruentX been leveraging and using AI models?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we started very early off in the Power Platform model when we were working with AI models there. Everything from both object detection and text classifications and all of that. So I'm going to say it's probably 3 to 4 years already in regards to seeing how these technologies use. If you ever seen my session, Power Apps in the Real World, I go more in detail about these different classifications. I give the example of how I use the object designer or the object model to take pictures of my wife's closet so I could tell if she bought new shoes or not. So it can actually take a picture and recognize it. But for a business purpose, I think it's J&G PepsiCo or something like that. Isn't that their name now? They changed their name, but Pepsi. If you search for Pepsi on YouTube using the model, you'll see that Pepsi had to find a way to get faster inventory counts, right? So they created a model through Power Platform using the object detection, and they're able to go to the shelf and take a picture of bottles of soda, cans of soda, stacks of soda, and the model knows based on the picture how depth, and it can count. So if you think about the driver going stop to stop to stop, having to count all those sodas, which by the way, now the sodas aren't just in the soda aisle anymore. They're also at the checkout counter, right? So now they got to go there too. So they can just go click, 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 know how many bottles of soda they need, get a quick inventory. And it's, again, another way that AI back then started to change our viewpoints of what it could do, right? Most recently, we've been a part of the Viva story, right? Working with the Microsoft team on deploying Viva for sales and how its benefits for sales organizations inside of Dynamics. That's been going on probably around 9 months now, right? If you haven't heard of Viva for Sales, take a look at our getvivasalesright.com website. We also have a wonderful calculator out there that can help you get your ROI on it. But like I mentioned, these tools are instant ROI. They're already things you have in your stack, right? So it's already Teams, it's already within Outlook, it's already with CRM or Salesforce. So it's not like you're having to deploy a whole bunch of new code. It's just enabling some of these features. And we're going to see a path of deployment and new code and new things coming from Microsoft at a pace you guys have never seen before. And it's going to continue and continue to be everywhere, from the Windows desktop to your Azure, to your cell phone, to your laptops. Connor, I'm sure you take a lot of pictures with your phone, right? You're always making those backups and you got all those duplicates. Wouldn't it be nice to say, hey, ChatGPT, could you go through all my photographs and remove all the duplicates and sort them into trips and albums, arranged by dates and timeframes? And it just does it. That's some of the capabilities that are being deployed and that we'll see in the future.
Speaking of Viva Sales, we actually have kind of developed our own extension off of that, and other technologies as well, right? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so Viva Sales is primarily designed to work inside the Outlook and Teams clients, but our businesses work inside of CRM, right? So when you're looking at your pipeline, you want to be able to manage and see the future there. We've built a product called DialoguePrime, and what DialoguePrime is doing, it's looking at the call intelligence of what's happening through Viva Sales and through Teams, and bringing that into your pipeline. So updating your opportunities automatically, creating activities, creating timeline entries, showing phone calls that have been made on accounts, providing those summaries for the detail, and that will let you go right through that. And again, I think from what we're seeing right now and the percentage of ROI on that, it's been an amazing journey. You ever join a call and on that call, several other people join who you don't know? So the first thing you're doing is you're writing down all those names, right? You're not paying
Yep.
attention to the call. Well, another feature is that it actually goes off and creates all those contacts in your system for you or relates them to the account. So it's a huge time savings. And again, using some of the tools you have. And we're really excited about it. Available for both CRM and Salesforce as well.
Cool. I think one of my favorite things it does is I don't remember the exact name, but kind of like there's like a keyword function where you can kind of create your own keywords that you can track. That way you can keep an eye on, okay, we're winning a lot of these deals. What are some of the things that we're selling in those deals? What are some really common keywords that are being said in those deals that are leading to closing those deals? I think that's one of my favorite features of it.
Yeah. When you look at so those are called playbooks and plays.
Mm-hmm.
And what they allow us to do is, for the first time ever, get context of the meeting that you're scheduling, right? So if that meeting is a discovery call, or maybe it's a closing call, maybe it's a customer service support issue call, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can then redirect the DialoguePrime system to then rate that call in a different playbook. And the
Mm-hmm.
playbook can be your sales process. It could be, like I said, a winning deal process. You can pretty much granularize that into all your different calls. And then you're unlocking intelligence from those calls that you'd never seen before. So within
Yeah.
the call, you can see, hey, your salesperson on their first call never talked about budget, never talked about timeline. So how
Yeah.
do you expect how do I even know? Meanwhile, they qualified the deal as it's moving forward, right?
Yeah.
They don't even, there is no deal. So you'll get visibility into that. And when I say you, it's for the salesperson. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
big brother product. It's actually an AI-based mentoring tool that
Yeah.
allows you to infiltrate it across the entire system. And be happy to talk more about that or check out some of the future calls there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and open us up for Q&A. Um, Feel free to paste any questions in the chat, or if you want to open up your mic, just raise your hand and we'll get you unmuted. Um, we're super interested to see what you all are thinking about in terms of this new AI wave, and some of the things that, maybe some of the things you're thinking about implementing in your org. Um, I think that would be really interesting to see and talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'd be important for people to also understand, where we're going from here as well with AI.
Hmm.
So, today, the apps that you thought weren't possible for will be possible with AI, and AI will help build them, right? The emerging models, as we talked about, you heard about the LLMs and the ChatGPT models. We're starting to see specific industries, and those are or customer only models. You can see that it's called a domain specific language, or a DSLM model. And that model would be something like the Bloomberg model, which they've taken all the financial transactions for trades, and you can ask it, should I trade or not, right? And then mainstream, obviously, Office is used by a whole bunch of people, right? And bringing those into Office and doing the summaries and doing the AI to respond is another big one as well. And we're seeing a huge increase in that. So I think, it's a great time to be looking at it, to be questioning, to be looking
Mm-hmm.
at how I can bring this in. It's not a wait time at all, because if you wait, you're going to be left behind, right?
Yep.
And your competitors are going to bring this technology to sell it faster, do it quicker, and that's what's going to happen. I think there's some questions. You want to shoot over to the questions and start asking, Connor?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, sure.
Gerald has asked a question. Viva Sales is entirely closed to the outside world. Is that true?
I'm sorry. I just saw the question from Gary had pop up. So can you repeat that, please?
Yeah.
I'll take the question for 1,000, Connor.
Is is Viva Sales entirely closed to the outside world? Meaning, if I use Viva Sales, is any of that data that I'm using gonna become exposed to the public?
No, you don't need to worry about that. The data that you use both in Copilot or Viva Sales or most of the Microsoft tools stays internal to your business and enterprise. It's not used in training models. It's not used to do anything other than give you back the prompt and response. Good question.
Yep. Kyle asked, will this AI help build flows, and how will it affect flows? I can take that one. You
Sure.
can now use Copilot to generate Power Automate flows. Now, again, keyword Copilot, right? It's a great place to start, but you are going to want someone to go through and make sure it's actually doing what you need it to do, and doing it in a correct way, because it's again, it's a Copilot. It's not the pilot.
And not just in Flow today, right? Not just
Hmm.
Power Automate. If you're in the preview, you can go up and go to Power Apps, and you
Yep.
can tell it in natural language, hey, build me an app that is for a car dealership that has car models, and it tells me about mileage, interior colors, all of that, and press the button, and it'll go off and build you that
Hmm.
app based on what you said. And how does it know that? It goes across the internet looking at all the different information it's been learned on and says, geez, what's in a vehicle inventory system, right?
Hmm.
And then it responds. And not only does it respond with the model, it actually gives you the data. So the
Hmm.
data was filled out with Toyotas and Fords and all the other cars, their mileage, their interior colors. And then I said, well, oh, I forgot to mention transmission. So I enter, please add a column for transmission. Transmission shows up, and now I see automatic, manual, automatic already filled in. So just again, the use cases, generating data for your developers, right? Or for your businesses to be able to say, generate now all the data that matches these test cases and some real scenarios that we're seeing it being used today.
Hmm. Glenn asks, can you foresee AI replacing the need for an actual developer to create cloud flows, JavaScript, web resources, and things like that? Um, I want to start this one. I'm going to say not yet. Again, the key word here is Copilot, right? This is not replacing a developer anytime soon. I do think, as things get better, as things get more consistent, as it learns more, these models are going to be more capable of, performing more like a junior developer role. But think about like a junior developer role anyways. As a junior developer, when you create something and you write your code, it's going through layers and layers and layers of approval before it actually gets deployed, right? It's the same thing with AIs. You still have to go through the layers of approval and review before you can kind of totally deploy something. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Love it. Look, right now, nobody wants to scare anybody, right? Nobody wants to say that these things, can they be automated? You see the stories all the time in the blogs. I have 5 jobs that I've automated through the use of ChatGPT times 5, right? That goes off and creates all these sessions, that integrates with each other, it loops, it does answers. But at the end of the day, as we've shown in the context and on this call, you still need responsible AI, which means a human's going to be in the loop, whether it's at the review of that code, whether it's involved at the outcome of what you see there. So Could a junior level developer be replaced by some of that? Probably, right? And I would say, here's a good analogy that somebody told me the other day. Remember Word and the templates in Word, right? You build out, you need a template for X. You went on the internet, you grabbed it, whatever. Those templates are in Word today, right? To create those templates. Do you have someone building templates for you at your business right now? No, right? That role's gone. And I think you'll see it very similar in an AI scenario where, the fabric of an app can be built with low code, right? By someone who's not a developer. And it doesn't change anything for the developer, because what I believe is those developers will be more focused on the actual things that differentiates my business and where they need to spend time on, and not the mundane task of running the daily business, right? So what's my competitive advantage? Where are those areas? And then I can put my horsepower to work in that area, not on how do I connect CRM to Salesforce, or how do I connect Teams to Outlook, right? Those things should be native and should be available. And as they get built, and as AI learns how to build them, and the connector library, like, again, we see this in low code, no code, and Power Apps today, right? You have those connectors that you don't have to write anymore. So did I replace that developer's job that wrote that connector, or did I just give them some other thing to do? And the answer is they're just using it, consuming it, but they still need to be involved in working through it. We're not talking autonomy here like a Tesla, right? Where it's just going to put it on Copilot and it goes by itself. That's not the end game. I'm sure some companies will push in those directions, and that's why you see some of the leaders of technology in the world are concerned about exposing that, and for good reason. So right now, I hear all the right things from all the AI partners about responsible AI. There's some great articles on it. If you follow my Twitter, I'll tweet one out later today on AI responsibility. You can take a look at it. It gives you some ideas and prompts. But at the end of the day, there's no need to scare everybody and start talking about losing my job. It's more of an assistant and Copilot to help me be better at what I'm doing, and help recognize things that I may not have noticed.
Right. It's a tool. Alan, Alan's got a really good question, and I might start practicing this a little bit. He says, can you generate an AI model that will produce a perfect topology I can use for my wife?
Wow. Probably. Again, there's lots of different ways, but let's talk about that. How would I do it? Well, first I would need to have some of the incidences with your wife in the training data, so that it would know that, well, if you say I'm going out with the boys tonight, you're going to get in trouble, right? So that would be a great example of how we would use those training models to be able to do that.
Right. Kind of in a similar vein, Glenn is asking, Chris, did your wife appreciate you taking inventory of her shoes?
Let's keep that on the down low.
We'll keep that. Okay.
But it was just, it really was just something that came to mind on taking a look at it to see, okay, I'm in, can I count a bunch of items? And the only thing I could think of that I had mass items were a bunch of shoes. So I'll give you the actual truth on the story is that it actually failed. And the reason why it failed is because the AI could not detect the difference between certain types of shoes. It could easily detect a sneaker based on the designs that are, stitched into the side, the thick soles and all of that. But when it came to a shoe, it could not detect the difference between a shoe and a boot. Because, if you had them full size, it would know. But if it just saw it laying on the ground, it wouldn't know. So again, that AI model was not smart enough to handle based on its training data. Could I have run 10,000 pairs of shoes through it to help it out? Yeah, but typically you need a subset of about 30 different styles in your training model. And again, you guys can play with this stuff today. You may find something out that you'd like to know, but I would love to, if you do it, tweet me. Maybe we'll use it in our next Power Apps in the Real World session.
Yeah, I mean, if you buy your wife 10,000 pairs of shoes, you're setting expectations awfully high for Christmas. So I really wouldn't advise that for anyone here.
Nice. I think someone asked what my Twitter handle is. It's at Cognetta. So we can put that in the window if someone could type that in. And then I think We got a question or a response from JC here. He asked, how can AI help the chief revenue officer specifically? And I think, this is something that a lot of people are really starting to look at, and that's revenue operations and what are they responsible for? And if you look at what they're responsible for is, the bottom line on the numbers and what are the visibility across those different points and how do they get that? And AI can assist in many ways, not only from productivity, but predicting pipelines, predicting closures on deals. Again, in the call intelligence aspects, we're seeing that on the type of deals and if it's true or not, lots of ways to make that happen.
Right.
I know we got about 4 more minutes, so if there are any other questions that are, that people may have, happy to stay on and keep asking. And I definitely want to thank you, Connor, for being a gracious host and being out here to help support and really get the word out about AI. And we've put in a link in the window. So if you joined us and you have an interest in just getting a free consultation on AI, we're happy to spend an hour with you, talk through your specific challenges, concepts, ideas you may have, and see what we can brainstorm together. We'd love to be able to talk to you about it. It may help form our future products or may help you solve your business problem, all there for you. Hey, a shout out to Alan from Own Backup. Thanks for joining. Like to show it to your colleagues. Yep. Just reading some of the things here. I may have to publish the shoe model now. If you look up on YouTube, Power Apps in the Real World, I've done probably, 15 or 20 of those at Community Summit, webinars, those kind of things. And I do talk about it and show some of the training data model. So, but maybe me and Connor will do a video just on object detection model. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yes, Gerald, the link from Tasha will get you that free hour of consultation and really the capability to meet with to work with you guys and try to help answer your questions. And really, this is a lot like our medic calls that we do for Summit, where we make our talent available to be able to help you get your question answered. That's what it's all about, giving back to the community, helping explain these technologies and what's going on and how CongruentX is positioned to help you and your firm get there.
All right. Any last minute questions before we close out here? We'll give it a couple seconds here.
What's for lunch?
That's the important one.
Thanks, Gerald. Appreciate that. Thank you for joining. Rob, thank you as well. Good to see you.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. Thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully this was, at the very least entertaining. AI is going to be, more and more important to think about as time goes on. So we really appreciate you listening to us. Chris, thanks so much for joining and your wisdom.
Thanks for having me and inviting me to your beautiful cabin. I really enjoyed that wonderful fireplace in the back and the fireside chat. And, again, AI serious thing here. It's coming faster than you've ever seen anything be adopted. Don't fall behind. We can help you stay on top. Reach out to us through the link or through our sales channel. We'd be happy to talk to you guys and help you get the most out of AI, CRM, and the Microsoft technology stack. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.